Right, you're very welcome along. If you've just joined us, you've missed a great conversation between Pat Nevin and Joe from last night's football show. Great show lined up for you between now and 10 o'clock here on OTB AM. Eoin, Sheahan, good morning to you again. How are you?
Very well. What's the crack?
I guess people are kind of finishing off The Last Dance and deciding where they stand on Michael Jordan as a person and his story and who the similar people like him in the world of sport are. And obviously the answer is a very short list of no one really is the same as Michael Jordan. But reading what Horace Grant has been saying about him as well, that it's very one-sided, that there were loads of teammates who went back at him constantly, but that it's been edited to make it look like there was only MJ giving out about people. He was the only one who had these standards. Nobody could ever stand up to him or take him on. And like, you know, it's a documentary that's been made by his production company, and it has a narrative to sell, and that narrative is that nobody is ever going to get close to Michael Jordan in terms of competitive instinct. It did tell that story really well, but I'm sure there are other aspects to it.
I would say so too. I would say on the whole, nobody's going to get close to this guy ever narrative. I don't believe that. I don't believe that for a second. I think that it hasn't necessarily, been the documentary to end all debates around the greatest sports person ever. If anything, what Michael Jordan did and the greatness of Michael Jordan actually just inspired a whole new wave of sports people, particularly basketballers, for them to go on and be better than Michael Jordan, for them to go on and actually be more competitive than Michael Jordan. I think Jordan was a bit of an outlier in the fact that he came in at the time when he called it himself the traveling cocaine circus in Chicago, turned a team of misfits really into contenders, and then a good bit of GM work from Jerry Krause that turned them into a team that are the best in the country. And then that's when his standards managed to shine through, to take a really, really good team to consistent greatness. Like, that's the norm now in sport, is it not? That you have those people who are highly tuned in to what they need to do on a day-to-day basis to achieve the best. Now, Jordan may be credited for a lot of that in terms of changing the culture, especially in basketball locker rooms. But this whole idea that nobody will ever be on the same level as him competitively, it's just not true.
Everybody who comes after, though, is standing and following his path. So did we end up wandering into the who's the best basketball player of all time debate accidentally here? And are you saying that somebody can come along and be better? There's definitely a feeling that anybody who comes along after him is just following a prototype, and the originator of the prototype is the best because he had to do that first.
Without question, but definitely that's at the time. I don't know, if Michael Jordan is born 20 years later, is he still the very best player in the league? The answer to that question is yes, just because he has something about him that would allow him to train himself in a different way. Would he be better at a three-point shot? I think that's unquestionable. I don't think it's you're comparing to say, well, he couldn't shoot the three, therefore, not that he couldn't shoot the three, he didn't shoot the three, therefore he couldn't make it in today's game. That's nonsense. He would also be coached differently. He would be brought up differently. He would have started on the weights sooner. Who knows? He might have had a more LeBron James type body composition if he has grown up later on in life. Who knows all these different variables? But there's also a different way of looking at it. Like if you take the current crop of players and put them back to a different era. Like I saw Lou Williams saying that LeBron James would have won 15 straight championships was he playing in 1975. So if he was actually playing in the 90s, he'd probably be somewhere in the middle. Of course, today's modern players are better than they were in the 90s, but it's just an impossible debate to have because you can't transfer Jordan into the current conditions.
No, it's true. Look, it is absolutely true. The documentary is definitely giving people the opportunity to look back at that and kind of see what that culture was like. Miguel Delaney's written a piece today saying that there's no one really in football who you can compare to the way that Jordan treated his teammates. Roy Keane would be the closest, maybe Stuart Pearce, but given that football is such a bigger sport, just in terms of the physical size of the actual pitch versus the court, it's impossible for anybody to have such a huge impact. But that Cristiano Ronaldo has that level of personal vanity and drive to be the best that Jordan had. It would have been great to see Jordan given a rival who was worthy of the name. I guess that's the kind of, that when you see the story told over the period of time, that he imagined everybody, even people who weren't worthy of being a rival, were rivals, sometimes on his own team. Sometimes it's just somebody who looks sideways at him. Sometimes it's just the media. But it would have been great for him to have had Ronaldo if he was Messi, or to have had LeBron at the same time in his peak, going up against him and maybe winning titles from time to time to see exactly where that level of competition would have driven them. Because I think that would have been, that's the one thing. Like, there are individuals along the way. There was an MVP award here and there, and he's like, yeah, I should have been the MVP, but so I was going to go out and prove that. No one actually ever had the great career. I don't know enough about basketball history, but you can correct this here. No one ever had a great career who's considered an all-time great in that kind of top 3, top 4 conversation.
I think it's a good point, especially if you compare it to today's basketball. My opinion is, I'm definitely of the opinion that the competition to LeBron as an individual is greater than the competition to Jordan at the time. Now, you could say that's because Jordan was better than LeBron and therefore the gap was bigger. But I think if you compare Kevin Durant, for example, with anybody who is considered to be number 2 in the 90s, I think he's better than them. He's one of the all-time greats. Steph Curry during his pomp a couple of years ago, exactly the same in that great Golden State team. That being said, there's a reason why nobody got a look in the 90s was because of Jordan's greatness. And we saw a lot of the Bad Boys Pistons earlier on in the series, like a great team. How great were the individuals? Well, Isaiah Thomas has to go down as one of the best point guards of all time. That Utah Jazz team that we see near the end, outstanding as well, with John Stockton and Karl Malone. And the same with the likes of Reggie Miller and Clyde Drexler to a point. But are any of them on the level of that Golden State team that LeBron has to contend with? Absolutely not. However, if we go back to the start of Jordan's career, it would have been so cool to see perhaps peak Larry Bird or peak Magic during a little bit of peak Jordan or peak Bulls, crucially, because had that Magic Johnson Lakers team been around for that peak Bulls team, I know you're missing it by almost a full decade here, so it's not even close really, but you would have had a greater sense of who the greatest really is, or how great Jordan was and how much better he was than his predecessors. Like, I think there is kind of there's an element here, just if you're talking about standing on the shoulders of giants, that LeBron wasn't as successful because he couldn't have done it without Jordan. Jordan couldn't have had the great success he had on a multitude of levels without Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. Like, they saved the league. The NBA was ripe for picking and ripe for someone like Nike to come in and make billions of dollars because of the likes of Magic and Bird.
I get that they're in a continuum in terms of the popularity of the sport, but are they in terms of style of play and the daring of the breadth of ambition as an individual on the court and how to run a game and how to run a team? I don't know. I don't know enough about the sport to know that, but it feels as if there was something about Jordan's athleticism and eventually where the tactical nous comes from and his leadership skills, which evolve over the course of this from I'm just going to be the scoring leader to I'm going to lay it off to somebody who's actually free.
Yeah, it's true. And I think Magic probably comes a bit closer to that. Like, did Magic or Bird have the mental attributes that Jordan had? Not a chance. And like that's the key thing here, isn't it? The competitive instinct. Like, I have heard the argument made before that Magic is more of if you had to pick like a team of players, that Magic might actually be a better all-rounder for your team than Jordan would. He would be better at fulfilling backcourt positions. But in terms of attitude and mentality, no one is close to him. Yeah. I think the Roy Keane comparison is close to spot on. Ronaldo, as you mentioned there, is the only other person in football that I can think of off the top of my head.
But isn't it actually that Jordan is a perfect amalgamation of Keane, Messi and Ronaldo? That's the skill set that we're talking about. That's the level of athleticism. That's the level of personal vanity. That's the level of domination and willpower. It's all of the best aspects of those three players that you would need before. Like, that's the level we're talking at here, no?
I think so. Definitely Keane and Ronaldo. Like, I guess sometimes when you deal with somebody who is so uber competitive and has driven themselves to the highest standards, you do not give them enough credit for their natural talent enough. But you do hear the stories of Jordan not making the high school team. But I guess he was only a freshman when he didn't make that high school team, and he would have made it and would have been their best player later on and during his high school time. You would have heard him in his first couple of weeks in college in North Carolina not being particularly impressive, and then all of a sudden within a couple of weeks he was the best player on the team. And the same to a point, not really. I was going to say the same to the NBA. It's not true. Like, I guess
isn't it?
He wasn't number one pick is my point. Whereas Lionel Messi, he's number one pick all the way through. If there was a draft in football, he was the unbelievably talented kid.
Yeah.
So for me, Ronaldo and Keane is a much more accurate comparison.
I do want to just, and we're going to move on here, but I do want to talk about the Mayo football team in this context, about how they have been the great rival that the Dubs needed, and they're completely undervalued for that role, even though it's like they're right there. They're right at the level of Dublin. They're just a tiny bit behind them, and this Dublin team is the greatest team of all time. So where do they fit in that conversation? No one ever says that they're like the third best team of all time or the fourth best team of all time. But actually, if we were to objectively measure how close they are to the greatest team of all time, then they have to be in that conversation, and they're not. Nobody will put them in that conversation. Like, and why is that? How do we get to the point where they get dismissed as celebrity losers, despite the fact that they were the ones who helped craft and evolve the greatest team of all time? Not a point that we can get into now because we don't have time, but we might come back to that one. 13 minutes past 8 this morning. Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp is back to return to training in the concept of behind closed doors matches. Premier League players have started training in small groups without contact in what is the first phase of Project Restart. But Burnley have become the first Premier League club to confirm a positive coronavirus test result. They say assistant manager Eoin is asymptomatic and will now isolate for 7 days in line with regulations. Eoin is one of 6 results that were positive from the 748 tests conducted among players and club staff on Sunday and Monday. The positive results came in 3 separate clubs. Watford returned 3 from 1 player and 2 staff members, and further testing is due this week. A final decision on the resumption of Serie A will be made on the 28th of May, so 8 days' time. Players are allowed to train in groups again after revised safety protocols were approved by the Italian government. A meeting on the 28th of May will decide whether the Italian top flight can resume on the 14th of June. In racing, just 8 days after reopening, racecourses in Paris have been ordered to close their gates again. The French government say racing must cease in 4 regions because they are deemed COVID-19 red zones. France Gallop's president says the decision to close courses is inexplicable and irrational. Racing is due to resume behind closed doors in Ireland on the 8th of June. Coming up here on OTB AM, Sports Page is coming your way in just a moment. I'm going to talk Lance Armstrong a little bit in light of the fact that he's the next one to get the documentary treatment from ESPN. Kevin Kilbane is going to look back on a decade at the Aviva, including his time up against Leo Messi and the decision to put white boots on for the first time when you're up against Leo Messi, knowing full well that the cameras of the world are going to be on you, certainly the cameras of the Irish sports pages. And then the OTB Culture Hall of Fame is Lenny Abramson, who obviously is riding high on the success of Normal People, which is doing amazing business right around the world at the moment, to the point where Andrew Lloyd Webber was tweeting about getting Paul Mescal involved in the sing-along, which is like, that is essentially overnight stardom, Eoin. That's like, oh yeah, Andrew Lloyd Webber wants me on Twitter to get involved in a sing-along. Holy moly.
Yeah, it must be absolutely nuts for him. Like sitting there in lockdown in his London apartment. It's always the same apartment we see in all these chat shows, the plain grey wall, and it is literally over the course of 3 weeks turning from somebody who people I'm sure in acting circles knew to somebody that everybody all around the world, from the Kardashians to the Lloyd Webbers, are now idolising at the moment.
His agent is going to be very busy.
Yes, I would say it's been the most insanely busy few weeks for Paul Mescal's agent. Like, and what happened? Like, just imagine it, just being trapped there with your own celebrity in your apartment, just waiting to go out to the world and soak it all in.
I know. I mean, come on. Imagine how great life would be. Like, this is lockdown has been this kind of perfect thing for them up to this point, and now it's like, come on, look at all the things I'm missing out on. Let me out there. This is my time.
He's like, I guess in certain ways, anybody in that situation is now missing the opportunity to completely mess their life up. If I had that level of fame, I would do something stupid that would, I don't know, end me within 2 weeks or something like that. But I'm sure he's got more sense than that. So,
yeah.
Like,
well,
he's...
Look, you know, you'd be ringing people up asking for advice. Colin Farrell, you had a little bit of this. What do I do? Do I have 10 years of hell raising like you did? I mean, that sounds pretty good, right? Especially when you come out the other side and it's all grand, essentially.
Yeah, it's what do you do then? Like, do you
hell raise? You hell raise?
You know, like you hell raise, but like on a practical sense, like do you move home for a while? Do you go down to the local pub in Kildare, wherever in Kildare he's from, and you see the old fellas at the bar saying that's the fella now who made it good, and then you finally get that pride in your heart.
No, you go to LA.
I'd imagine. You
go to LA. What are you talking about? What are you even talking about? Leixlip or LA? Which of these are you picking? Come on.
Leixlip.
No, it's LA.
LA's supposed to be a bit of a dump. Like, right. I guess he's got to get the huge payday yet as well, doesn't he? Like, I'm sure they're unbelievably well compensated for a BBC/Hulu television show. But it's after the fame where you can start saying, well, look who I am. I can command a huge fee for the next thing. So That's what happens next.
Yeah. Okay. Don't listen to Eoin Sheahan. That's my advice to Paul Mescal this morning. You know, go and have one night in the local pub, all right, but get the plane, get to LA, have the crack, do the hell raising, and then...
Can you have much crack over there? Like, I haven't heard of is it a place where you can have the crack?
I mean, yeah. Have you not seen any of the movies about movies? You got to go and watch some of that stuff. That's like...
I'm a huge Entourage fan, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't necessarily scream crack to me. It screams a lot of posing and not a very genuine place, and a place where you can't really relax at all unless you are somebody who's been in the film industry for 25 years.
Okay, that does all sound terrible. Hanging out with the most beautiful people in the world and them loving you. It sounds awful, Owen. How could you ever survive?
It's artificial love. The lad down the pub in Leak Slip, his love ain't artificial.
Well, not to just pick on Leak Slip, but every small town in Ireland, if he walks in and is like, well, don't acknowledge that guy now. He's got far too big for his boots. That's exactly what would happen. If he went back to the pub in Sligo, really, like Connell is actually experiencing in the pub in Sligo, it's like they don't like you now that you're gone to Trinity. Who do you think you are, reading books?
I'm talking about the genuine love that the old fella will feel for you after he's had his 7th pint.
Well, we'll talk about all this with Lenny Abramson a little bit later on, coming your way on the OTB Culture Hall of Fame in association with Now TV. Now, though, it's time for the papers.
OTB AM.
It's one of the longest openings to the shows that we've done in a long time. Elton looked devastated and I was furious on homophobia in football, said Pat Nevin, the conversation that he was having with Joe Malloy last night. We also have Premier League confirmed 6 individuals test positive for COVID-19, which is a relatively low number considering the amount of people that they tested. A world for men by men, more from the brilliant Paul Rouse series, talking about the evolution of women's sport. That's a lecture series that is given every Tuesday evening for the last 6 or 7 weeks. And then a brilliant piece from Arthur this morning, the unassuming brilliance of John B. Keane's newspaper columns. I was completely unaware of the fact that John B. Keane essentially wrote a column for 30 years for the Limerick Leader, which they've republished over the last while. And he's talked with Alan English, who's now the editor of the Sunday Independent newspaper, who, as the editor of the Limerick Leader, took them back out from cold storage and started to republish them again. And there's some amazing lines in it. He talks about keeping pigs and having 2 pigs and then deciding he was never going to have pigs again because after he sent them off to the butchers, he missed them. And it's just a beautiful story. The column would come up by bus. Somebody, he would handwrite it out or type it out and put it on the bus, and somebody would get off the bus and deliver it or it would be collected by somebody from the Limerick Leader office. So a fantastic piece there that you should check out on offtheball.com.
The Irish Independent this morning leads to those Jurgen Klopp quotes that you've mentioned. Games without fans won't diminish glory of title. Liverpool boss accepts it's not a perfect package as 6 positive tests emerge ahead of return. Also, this is an interesting line. Wexford lead way with new 10-week club programme. So Wexford County Board basically said, here's our 10-week programme to get everybody in the club situation in Wexford back out into the pitch. Once the government gives the green light, once the GAA gives the green light, we will be ready to go. So this whole thing about preparing, while you've got a bit of time now to actually get back when things eventually are allowed to get back, that's certainly been a course of action that Wexford have taken. And it sounds pretty good to me. So 10 weeks, each club player could have 4 games minimum. So you'd have 5 weekends of hurling, 5 weekends of football, and you'd get at least 4 games each if you're a club player. And for 2020 and the way this year has turned out, that wouldn't be a bad trade-off.
Well, to go back to offtheball.com for a moment, some breaking news this morning. Ty Kennelly's future with the Sydney Swans looks increasingly uncertain. Here's a story that had been confirmed on the AFL's website this morning that he is one of the coaches at the Sydney Swans who's been stood down, and there's no guarantee that until things return to normal, certainly there's no guarantee that he'll be rejoining the coaching ticket. So obviously a Sydney Swans legend had been involved in coaching the midfield in the AFL for the Sydney Swans over the last while, and he's been stood down. So you're beginning to see very, very, like, he's a household name in Aussie rules, and he is one of the coaching ticket that has not been reinstated as AFL looks to return. So we send him the very best, and I guess this is just a fairly dire situation in global sport at the moment where loads of people are struggling to keep their jobs, and I guess that's one of the reasons why football is coming back as well, or they're trying to get football back.
Yeah, absolutely. The back page of the London Times this morning is restart boost. There's only 6 test positive. Hudson-Odoi trains despite rape accusation. Meanwhile, so Premier League's plans to resume its season next month received a significant boost yesterday when 748 COVID-19 tests produced only 6 positive tests. And saliva on ball may result in penalty runs, is the cricket headline.
Okay, just had to confirm that one first there. The Irish Times next, and there's a Project Restart boosted with only 6 positives from 748 tests, as you've just said there. Sean Moran's piece, 30th anniversary of a special year in history of the Rebel County, obviously 1990. They did the hurling and football double. PFA have done a survey of footballers in England. 22% are depressed or considering self-harm. And City likely to learn European ban fate in July. Kind of forgot about that story, rumbling away in the background that Manchester City are not going to be playing in the Champions League if that ban is upheld.
The Mirror this morning leads with Danny Rose's latest comments saying, "We are being treated like lab rats." Angry England star Danny kicks back against plan to reopen this season. And they put the coronavirus story into terms that football people can understand. First day back, and the score is Premier League 748, coronavirus 6. And United warn fans stay away from Old Trafford, and Tallaght in line to host Quartet. That is Tallaght Stadium looking like they're going to host a mini 4-team tournament in July that could serve as a warm-up for Europe for the top 4 clubs in the League of Ireland.
The Star back page this morning for you is Lab Rats, and that's that Danny Rose story as well. Rose says it's unfair to expect players to chance resuming. Hudson-Odoi back training after being arrested on suspicion of rape. 25 years on from the saga of Laois's ghost point, and Klopp, it will be just as intense. So Pat Nevin was saying he wasn't sure if the intensity levels were there in the Bundesliga at the weekend. It'll be interesting to see just how intense football is when it comes back in the Premier League, and whether or not some players will actually take that, let's go out and play, but let's not all risk getting coronavirus from each other here. There's a possibility that happens, right?
Of course, I'm sure the Bundesliga, and as far as I'm aware, there hasn't been any big explosion of new test cases or positive cases in Germany since the Bundesliga's return. I guess the sample size will only be after a few weeks of playing that we'll know for sure. But things all of a sudden seem very, very positive when it comes to the Premier League coming back. I think yesterday, having only 6 positive tests, it seems like a huge step forward, and it's starting to seem now like Danny Rose might actually be an outlier here, and Jurgen Klopp being in favour of the return now as well is a big voice to have on side. And I think it would take a fairly significant outbreak within a team at this point for the Premier League return to get railroaded. Restart is on that point. That is the headline in the Irish Daily Mail this morning. Premier League boost after just 6 positive tests. Molly Scott is the photo there on the back of the Irish Daily Mail. She's training in her home in Carlow, leaping over barrels. And revamped Interpros to spark television bidding war. Rival broadcasters gearing up for a potential bidding war to secure the rights for the mooted interprovincial series to be staged at the Aviva Stadium later this summer. So the province is planning to return to collective training at the beginning of June in preparation for August 10th. And on that point, you've got Cork legend Dinny Allen claiming the GEA should follow rugby example.
The Irish Sun, their back page this morning is positive spin. Only 6 of 748 had the virus. Klopp up for comeback test. And that's Dele Alli cycling to Spurs training yesterday in his bike. Fair play to him. And also they've got a picture of Callum Hudson-Odoi back in training.
The Irish News this morning leads with sport can only return at elite level, says Murray. This is Ciara Murray saying that a recommendation to maintain social distance remains for the year. What chance any of these sports returning at anything below elite resources level? So that's the former Republic of Ireland physio Ciara Murray saying that the top level will be the easiest one to get back up and running.
Which would suggest that Inter-County would have a better chance of coming back before a club. Are we allowed to talk about that? Is that a...
Well, John Horan has forbidden us for everybody from getting that notion now because... Of course, he said the club player would be prioritised or would be going first.
I mean, you might be prioritising them by not having them play just until everybody's aware of things. But anyway, look, it's not going to happen. The Telegraph, their back page there is tester fined for deceptive health claims. This is an exclusive by Sam Wallace. The man in charge of the Premier League's 4 million COVID-19 testing programme agreed to a $58,000 penalty to resolve a court action in the United States in which he was accused of making deceptive health claims for a medical app his company marketed. So that's not a great start. Clubs face $36 million weekly TV rebate if season overruns. Broadcasters due $330 million even if the campaign is finished. So that's money going back to Sky and BT. And Formula One urges PM to relax quarantine rules to save British Grand Prix. So the lobbying from Big F1 is underway with the Tories. You'd expect them to be able to know the right people to be able to get things done, right?
And hopefully they manage to have a word in the ear. Football is getting quite an easy ride from the government, I'm sure, is what they're saying over there. The Guardian back page is Premier League restart boost. Just 6 test positive for virus as players resume training, and fans to return very soon, claims UEFA president. This is Alexander Seferin, who's had an interview with The Guardian, who says that football stadiums being empty will not be a long-term thing.
I missed the Examiner, so here we go back to the Examiner. Kerry, there are no bank holidays for addictions. Kieran Kerry is an addiction counsellor and is talking about the difficulties that many people have, no matter what their addiction is, that it doesn't let up. There's brilliant pictures here from this project. I don't know if everybody is following the project on Twitter, Bringing Our History to Life by Rob Cross. So at Rob Cross 24/7, and he's been colorising old photographs. So this is obviously pictures of Michael Collins and Harry Boland with the match referee Pat Dunphy, the 1921 Leinster Senior Hurling Championship final between Dublin and Kilkenny. And Kilkenny have their names written across their jerseys. It looks pretty cool. And you'll have seen these photographs probably in your history books, but I've never seen them colorised, so that's a brilliant bit of work there. It was not football as you know it, but it was a godsend to be back in the grass. This is Colin McConnor's story about the first GAA training session in Europe in a long time, and it happened in Switzerland. And they also have this great story from Australia. Single Aussie rules players seek clarity on bonk ban. Have you heard about this, Eoin?
No, what's the story?
No sex, please. We're Aussie. Aussie rules players are seeking clarity on what media have dubbed a bonk ban. I mean, I don't know if the media saying that the media has dubbed something is actually like the best arm's length that you can get. But anyway, so somebody somewhere come up with the notion of a bonk ban. A league document, this is the AFL, outlined that players must act responsibly in regards to their sexual behaviour with casual relationships and hookups under scrutiny. Interesting choice of language, but not so much under scrutiny as they're like, please don't do this, lads. I mean, come on. So there are 1,300 people are close to it who are going to be in contact with all the players, and the players included in that. So I think it's really important we follow these rules, said Melbourne Demons defender Jake Lever. I've got a little baby at home and I've got a wife, so lucky for me. But the single boys, there's been a few murmurs around that they're really disappointed. A few of our players are trying to specify what that actually means and get some clarity around it. You can't have people around your place unless you're in an intimate relationship with them, said St Kilda midfielder Jack Billings. I'm fortunate I've got Sarah, my partner, living with me, but my housemate is single, so he's a bit unsure of what the next few weeks and months might look like.
It's always interesting to hear the word bonk thrown around, isn't it? It's always like the word bonk gets an unfair treatment, always used in relation to like casual encounters and things like that, as you mentioned in the piece there. Bonk is never used with someone you love, it seems, and
no.
That's justice for the word bonk is what I'm taking from that story this morning.
It's a very 1980s Sun word. That's definitely how I think it came into being. The message to players is to calm down a bit and just keep the visitors down to a minimum. This is the Collingwood Magpies president. He's one of the old guys. He's like, calm down. Come on. Can you not just, like, for a couple of weeks to get this whole industry back up and running? There's no point going through this if randoms are coming from everywhere. Which, you know, the Aussies, they obviously needed to have a word with the lads saying, come on, lads, now, come on, just for a little while. No bonk.
Yeah, that really is. I wondered, like that president of the Magpies, like did the Magpies president say no bonk for you today? Is it in the contracts? You know the way like Wimbledon are covered to get a big payout in the pandemic. I wonder, are the Magpies covered that their players are compelled to not bonk if there is a pandemic?
Are they insured?
Are they insured? I would like to hope so for a range of different reasons.
We've obviously kind of been positive and concerned, and then positive and then concerned about whether or not we're actually going to get any Premier League football this year. It looks now more likely than less likely that we will have Premier League football.
It does. It does. The positive test number from a huge amount of tests is actually quite small, relatively speaking. And like we've seen worse situations come out of German clubs before they actually came out and started playing again. So it looks positive. The template is there from the Bundesliga, and I really can't see a massive U-turn, as I say, on this whatsoever, unless there's just a really bizarre outbreak at this point. And like time will tell a little bit more as well. The longer the Bundesliga goes by, without positive tests or a large number of positive tests, then the more chance you give to other sports and other leagues saying, well, this is clearly the template to do it. Like looking into the finances of the Bundesliga, how expensive is it to pull off an operation like the clubs did at the weekend? If there are other organisations around the world who can do it on a lower scale with less of a cost on their output and all that, then I think that there is going to be it's like a domino tipping, and there could be a load of leagues coming back soon or making plans at the very least.
All right, it is 34 minutes past 8. As ever, if you want to get in touch with us this morning, you can WhatsApp us 087 9 180 180, or you can always use the hashtag OTB AM.